with whom honor I introduce Mandy Carter.
Well, first things first. I live in Durham, North Carolina. Anyone else from North Carolina down south? Yeah. We haven't had one drop of snow all year. So I'm doing my weather check to see if my flight will get up here for today. It said snow, and I thought, now, then I just talked to Gladys. She said, oh no, this is just a dusting. This would shut down the entire state of North Carolina until I got up here. The other sad news is I do have a life. I am a fanatic around women's basketball. ACC, Athletic Coastal. Our team just lost in the first round. Duke lost. UNC lost. Miami lost. And I purposely booked a flight at 7 in the morning to get back home to catch the Mandy not happy. But Duke won for the first time in 5 years the ACC Athletic Conference title, and then we're on to the NCAA. Does anyone in this room follow women's college basketball? I know we're in front of lesbians, so. Did I see a brother raise his hand up? Anyway, what I want to do today, actually I'm in sort of an interesting moment in my life. I'm going to share my remarks because I have to read it. If I don't, I tend to stray, and I don't want to do that. And of course, we have all day to have all these wonderful conversations. And if you ever get down to North Carolina, we have an extended invitation to come visit, have more of the conversation. But I do want to kind of frame this in one sense. Well, no, let me just start and I'll get to it, okay? Now, with a show of hands, how many people are not from Boston in this room? Whoa, not from Boston. How many people not from the state of Massachusetts? Whoa, LaShonda? Oh, God. Well, I said, well, where do you want to reach? He said, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Vermont, New Hampshire, whatever, and it worked. This is good, thank you, and especially with this weather, I want to thank you very much. So are you ready? Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
It is so great to be here on this, the Hispanic Black Gay Coalition's inaugural Lesbians of Color Symposium. I want to thank HBGC for the invite, the co-chairs, who one of them helped pick me up at the airport, Harvard Law School Lambda, but also all the sponsors. Look in your book, the people who sponsored this, all the special thank yous, and certainly the platinum, whatever those things are that are there. But most importantly, quite frankly, as an organizer, we don't get to do this if you do not come. So we need to thank you for being here, and also all the presenters that are going to be here as well, and any of the volunteers. I just say that because oftentimes we skip over that. You do not make these things happen if you all don't show up. So thank you to you for taking time to spend your day with us today. I bring you greetings on behalf of the National Black Justice Coalition. Founded in 2003, NBJC is a national civil rights organization dedicated to empowering Black, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and any other initial that really sincerely self-identifies you. And one of our missions is to end racism and to end homophobia. Next year will be our 10th anniversary. And I'm happy to say, as one of the co-founders, I would suggest this to people as organizers. When you go out and try to figure out what kind of stuff you want to get done, whatever it might be, that adage of don't mourn, organize, if there's a need, fill it, is critical because that's why you have an organization like HBGC. That's why you have the end up, and maybe a group, because at some point the conversation goes like this. Do you know what we need, or what would happen if, or things are so horrible, we've got to find some way to address this issue, address the situation. And oftentimes it's just only one or two of you, but oftentimes whatever you form gets larger. So that idea. So when we decided to form the National Black Justice Coalition for a key reason, we have got to have an organization that has the faces for those who cannot be seen and has the voices for those who cannot be heard. Because I'll tell you about, every one of us has to go through our own internal, whatever it might be, coming out process, whatever it might be. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you when you need to or you should know. That's all based on individual, we're all on our journeys. But the fact that you have people who are in that position to be visible, to be out, is essential, it's critical. And that's why I say when we started it, that was one of the reasons why. So on behalf of NBJC, we want to send our greetings. I'm also from the state of North Carolina. I want to send our greetings too, because you know what? The South is changing, y'all. In terms of for me, one thing I would love to think that could happen. You know how when you go to your very first meeting, the first thing you do is you do a go-around of your name, where you're from, your gender pronoun. But you know what I think we need to start doing? This is just my 2 cents worth. If we do not take the time to hear people's stories and their journeys, we don't take the time, a lot of assumptions are made, you get to it around the corner. But if you just slow down and ask, like, for me, I was raised in 2 orphanages and a foster home for the first 18 years of my life as a ward of the state of New York, born 1948. I'm standing here. LaShanya, what brought you here? What brought you here? God is what, you know, so whatever it is that we're in the same room, if you try to find out what were the things or the circumstances or whatever about those journeys, you've got to hear them. And don't skip over it. Take the time to do that. So for me, I was sitting in a high school social studies class, 40-minute long, 1966, a senior. I'm looking at Alex Dopkin. I know you can relate because we're just about, I think you're a little bit, but, you know. No disrespect. Yeah, but we're in the same generation. And maybe Sue Hyde. So I'm sitting in a class. This is one of those you never know what's going to happen. Our social studies class teacher brought in someone from the American Friends Service Committee. And by the way, with Google, if you hear me say any name, any group, and you want to find out more stuff, Google it. The American Friends Service Committee is a Quaker, essentially a Quaker organization, and they had a spokesperson come into our class talking about what AFSC was doing as a white peace organization, as an ally to the civil rights movement down south. But this person talked about 2 concepts that blew me away in a way that I didn't expect, and I'll tell you what they were and why 46 years later I'm here. One of the first things this person shared was this concept of the power of one. That every single one of us has the potential to impact change if we so desire to act on it. I'll repeat that. Every single one. The power of one, little O-N-E. To hear that in a society that basically tells you unless you have lots of money, know a lot of people, have that power, you cannot make a difference. Nothing could be further than the truth. So to hear that concept of the power of one. But it was the second thing that he shared that really left a huge impact on me, and that was this notion of, if what we do and what gets us up every day and why we're involved in what we're involved in is because if you have a philosophical underpinning of equality and justice for all, of equality and justice for all, it keeps you current, it keeps you relevant, it keeps you very intersectional in terms of equality and justice for all. And I'm hearing this and I'm thinking, well, what does that mean, equality and justice for all? So to hear that as a 17-year-old in a high school in Schenectady, New York, and now, having been in the movement since the age of 19, I'm now 63, I think I now begin to understand about what that equality and justice means. But not just me. Here's an interesting demographic. There are an estimated 78 million post-World War II baby boomers called the 1960s generation. That's a huge demographic we should be really involved with, be a part of, and for those of us who are still here. But I was thinking about that. I heard you had Lady Gaga on Harvard not long ago. What was it, a couple of days ago? Our 1960s generation, our culture workers were people like Joan Baez and Bob Dylan. Well, maybe your current culture worker are people like Lady Gaga. Someone's out there doing that cultural piece of work. But the fact that we are still engaged, part of it, I think, is because when we, in part of the 60s, it wasn't just about the one issue, ours is Vietnam, it was around all those connections that made a difference. So those 2 things, those 2 comments in that room, that 40-minute class, and here's the other reality check. I'm glad he came to my class because I'm not sure I would ever run into it. If we need to be fine, we need to go to where people are. I don't think I would ever run into AFSC had it not been for this person coming to our class. Now, when I think about equality and justice for all, one of the things when we started Southerners on New Ground down in North Carolina, Southerners on New Ground was just an attempt to find some way for those of us living in the South who are lesbian, of color, progressive, care about more than just LGBT, we wanted to find out what would be the common connectors. What would be the things that would really explain that there's such a connection with all of us? And we decided that part of that formula might be this. in fact, our statement was something like creating transformative models of organizing that connect race, class, culture, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, and fill in the rest of the blanks. Because once you look at each one of those things and how much they are so much interconnected, you begin to realize, now I know a lot of movements do solo organizing. I only do women's organizing. I only do choice organizing. I only do environmental organizing. I only do, by the time you get done saying, I only do, you have 50 people all stretched out doing one individual thing, and you try to find out what would be the things or things that would put people in the same place. So that equality and justice for all has a lot to do with the interconnectedness, but also, unfortunately, some of the real telltale signs of what happens when you don't have it. Which gets me to this point, that I think, and I had said this to you, Shania, that whenever we have a conversation about whatever might be perceived to be the current LGBT, gay, name me whatever it is, if we do not remember those who came before us, I am so done over this thing I cannot begin to tell you. If we do not remember those who came before us, in fact, if it had not been for their struggles and their sacrifices, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about how great marriage equality is or how great, name me, whatever it is. Because there was a time in this country, and by the way, this country, there used to be lands with people of color indigenous to these lands before any ships pulled up to these shores. You hear what I'm saying? This is a country when the founding fathers, all white, had to own property, including slaves, who basically said, well, no, women, no, you ain't going to get no vote. You can't vote. So women have no right to vote. Who else didn't have the right to vote? After we were at least deemed human beings after the slave trade, black folk. No, you don't have a right to vote. But then we get into other areas like, well, what about employment? No, not you. Not you, everyone, not you. What about military? Now I'm a lifelong pacifist, don't get me wrong, but no, not you. No women, no people of color. What about marriage equality? Not really good for women in terms of what marriage used to be. And remember, the last set of people to deal with marriage equality were folk of color because interracial marriage was against the law in this country. I graduated high school in 1966. It wasn't until June 1967 you had the Loving versus Virginia decision. And someone said, well, now I'm not a lawyer, but if someone came to me with a case called Loving versus Virginia about interracial marriage, I said, you all won. That was the name. It was Richard Loving, a white man, married to Mildred Jeter, a black woman. Turned it all upside down. But what if they decided, oh no, we can't do this, it's not going to work, or no, I don't think it's something, and the incredible drama that happened around this. But they had this sense of importance, they had a sense of history, but they had something that I think the opposition gets wrong every single time, and why I think we will ultimately win, or whatever you want to call it. They underestimate the power of love. Every time. The power of love. For these two people to take on this issue, black men were strung up and hung, thrown away. Don't even get me started on this issue. But they said this is so important to our lives. But they also understood that it was one thing to try to figure out how you do changing of hearts and minds on this, how do we figure out how we have this conversation, but you have to also bring the concept of public policy. They took it to the courts, and by one vote of the Supreme Court, they won. That decision has more probably to do with where we are now with marriage equality. And I share that because my fear is that we don't, as an LG, whatever the initials are, don't understand that. And I'm going to put these cards on the table. I watch TV every night. And every time there's yet another wonderful success, and they have some spokesperson talk about our success on marriage equality, our success on don't ask, don't tell. Why am I looking at white gay men? Why? No disrespect, why? Because that's, and I'll tell you, when I'm talking to my communities of color and I'm asking them to be involved, you know what I get back? Why? I don't see me. I don't see my story. I don't see any recognition of what we did. You're not hearing, why? Why should I do this? What point? And then when I go and ask simple question to some of the white gay men, well, what would you do, Mandy? Very simple, bring someone with you. Yeah. Well, the next time you get a call from MSNBC or CNN, you might want to just say, you know what, I want to have Sharon Letman Hicks from NBJC come. Yes. I want to have someone who's Latino come. Yeah. But no, It's ours, we want it, you can't have it. This is a peril. We're at a moment of peril if we continue to act this way. I was stunned when I heard this wonderful news of Marilyn finally getting marriage equality. Who was on there? Ezekiel, a black brother. I couldn't believe it. I said, so this list that I just ran off, military employment, whatever, it should sound real familiar because that list that was with women based on gender, people of color, ethnicity, is the same agenda that we are working on now, in my opinion, in terms of the LGBT community. But please be respectful. Please understand how important it is. We have got to have diversity of faces, voices, and stories as far as talking about this. And people see, and you know, everyone knows it's not really about a white gay thing, but what you see is what you get. It makes all the difference in the world, what you see, not what your intentions might be. So, how important? No. How essential it is that we have these faces, voices, and stories? Very much so. Now, I would also say, and I'm trying to be respectful as possible, we're now at a gathering for lesbians of color, but all the other names, you know, now it's not, you know, we have these other letters and identifiers, which I think we cannot have enough of. As far as I'm concerned, make the list as long as it can be. Because every one of those, you had to have some organizing, some work. When I first came out, way back then, I don't think we'd even have the word gay in Schenectady. It was just H for homosexual. But everything is gay. And lesbians had to fight for that L word really hard. Tell me why we need that L word. Why do we need all that? Then we had to fight for the B, bi. Huge battle over that. Then we had to fight for the T. Why? You know, why? But we have intersex, two-spirit, same-gender loving. Name me the list. And don't ever shorten them because every one of them took time. It took people's lives. It's essential that we embrace those. And if it takes you an extra second, when you consider the years it took for that, take the extra seconds. It's worth it to really think about what's important to have to be done. I would also say, in terms of maybe this whole issue of lesbians of color and however else people are self-identifying, when you think about the history of where we've come and where we are now, how many of us walk around that intersectionality every single day? That's our life. So somehow try to chop that up and or, you know, I've been to meetings that we have to talk about being a lesbian, Mandy. Well, I want to bring all of who I am to the table. I've gone to meetings. Why do you have to talk about that black thing, Mandy? No, you have to, don't need to be whole people. Don't make me want to bring all of who we are to the table. You know, so, but I also think we're in an interesting moment, because here's another interesting demographic besides the 78 million baby boomers. By 2050, this country will be majority people of color. By 2050. But you heard what I said earlier, that's what these lands were to begin with. But when you have that shifting demographic, how are people dealing with that kind of change? What's going on? I mean, and I don't mean when I say color, I don't mean just our black folk, I mean the whole rainbow. So maybe all that noise that we're hearing, did anyone hear Rush Limbaugh's comments? And the sheriff out in Arizona, we might think we found another thing that Obama ain't, you know. No. I would suggest to you that noise that we're hearing is really the desperate sounds of people trying to figure out how they're going to deal with the fact that history will move on with or without. With or without. It's going to happen. And so when I hear people say, my gosh, no, don't be nervous. You need to know that that is an indication of progress. That's what's happening. And if there was ever a time for us to be in the same room, same conversations, talking about alliances, coalition building, intersectional stuff, now be the time. I'm down south in North Carolina. One of the biggest issues down there right now is the growing Latino, African American, black communities and how we cannot be divided. And there's people doing everything they can around farm worker organizing, around pork processing, you name it. No, we cannot go into division. Name me what it is. But find ways, and I hope that this day might find some ways to have that conversation. If ever there was a time to talk about how we have to have coalition building, talking about alliances. And by the way, it's not like you always have to agree with everyone's philosophy or politic either. You know, there's a reality check of what I know I bring. I don't want to lose that. There's autonomy. but there's also something about putting into the pile the important things that will make a difference. I think the only other thing I want to share, because I'm conscious of time, I want to also say that, that again, given the history of what we had, I have to admit, if anyone would have told me that we would have in 2008 a woman who's told a long time ago you can't vote, you can't run for office, or a black man, the son of an interracial marriage which used to be against the law, and we now have the president. I'm sorry, I don't know about you all, I didn't think it was going to happen. It did, didn't it?
Yeah.
And it's about ready to happen again, perhaps. And the tie-in about Bayard Rustin is that, and if you don't know Bayard, you'll know it before the day's over, because I'll make sure everyone will hear about it. Bayard Rustin, out black gay man in the very homophobic 1940s, 50s, and 60s, 70s. This man stood out here, and because he didn't talk about just being black and gay, but the concept of Gandhian nonviolence, nonviolent direct action, the principles of nonviolence, that was a huge part of what you call the civil rights movement. He was the guy who helped make that thing happen on August 28, 1963, where you hear every year the King's speech, the I Have a Dream speech. But no one knows who he is. Bayard who? But here's a man who was living authentic life. But at that march in 1963, next year, and please save next year if you could, is the 50th anniversary of that march. We need to go back and beyond that mall. But should Obama get reelected, he'll be starting his second four-year term in 2013, when in 1963 we hadn't even passed the 64 Civil Rights Act, and we hadn't even passed the 65 Voting Rights Act. You know what I'm saying? So this incredible historic kind of journey of Bayard to Barack. Incredible, and everything that comes in between. So let me close with my closing observations. I think you already heard one, but I'll give you one more. I know that, and I was just saying this, by the way, I have to acknowledge Alex Dobkin. She's sitting in the back, and Alex is part of Old Lesbians Organizing for Change, OLA. And by the way, I used to be 17 once. I mean, it's like, we're now an elder. I was just, what did I say? I said, yeah, I'm an elder now. And I said, well, I was 17 once. I didn't just go poof and I'm an elder. No, we did our journey. Well, OLA, Old Lesbians Organizing for Change, is having their national gathering right here in Boston, July 16th to the 19th. So y'all.
19th to 22nd.
Oh, I'm sorry, Alex.
19th to 22nd.
19th to 22nd. And it's going to be great. Alice is going to do a house concert stuff, but that's going to be here in Boston. But I share that because when I talk about this intergenerational stuff, but probably more importantly, this kind of moment we're in. Every movement has their moments. I think for the lesbi-gay-trans movement in shorthand, we're about ready to be in a major movement moment. Major movement moment. It's not if, it's when. And it's also thanks to the women and people of color before, right? But here's the question I have, and it's a rhetorical question, and it's a real question. And this is something we need to answer as our community. If we are really serious about the concept of justice, and this is the question I'll ask, and how we organize around it, are we about justice, or are we about just us? That's the question. Are we about justice, or are we about just us? When I hear someone say to me, dealing with the death penalty, oh no, that's not a gay issue, we're not going to deal with the death penalty. No, that's not. Who's making these edicts about that's not? Who is that? Who's saying that? And then I realize part of the problem might be, it depends on who you bump into when you start to come out and be a part of something. All you know is all you know. And what you hear is LGBT rights is about the things that I just listed. You don't know any different. And so I think, well then, we need to cut some slack. But it has to go all the way around. Because when we got involved in that anti-Vietnam war, it wasn't just ending the word Vietnam, it was militarism, it was feminism, all the things. You can name me it. And so that's why we're still here. Justice or just us. And then the final thing I want to say that's critical, we need to make sure we add the A, allies. We do not, in my opinion, win these without allies. And allies, depending on what you have. If you're LGBT, non-LGBT. If you're people of color, non-people of color. If you're named, whatever that is, we've got to find ways to embrace and thank our allies because that's part of what makes it happen. So LGBTA, name me the list. So I will close by saying thank you so much for taking your time to hear what I've had to share. I'm excited about being here. I'm now 63, I'm going to keep going until I can't keep going anymore. I hope this will hold up with me on that. And also enjoy the day. Thank you so much.